Hey everyone, it's Brandon Lee, host of the podcast Escaping Rock Bottom. This podcast episode is inspired by Molina Healthcare. Here on the episode today is Diana Medina. She is the Chief of Clinical Education at Copa Health, one of our partners at Art of Our Soul as well. Yes. Diana, it's always good to see you.
Thank you for having me, Brandon.
Tell me a little bit about, before we get into Copa Health and what your role is at Copa Health.
Sure.
I always love our listeners and our watchers to be able to get to know you, Diana, as a person and your why. Like, what is your passion? What motivates you? What inspires you each and every day? Tell me a little bit about your childhood. What did that look like?
Well, I had a very warm childhood, I'm going to say. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I graduated from high school, and after high school is when then I came to the United States to study. And I like to say that's where I think my passion and my interest in mental health was born. And so, here I am. I mean, I came many years ago, went to school, took a windy road to become a psychologist. I studied engineering first and then decided to, this is not for me. Let me follow my passion. And here I am.
So I've always had questions for people who become a psychologist. Like, was there ever something that you witnessed in your upbringing, an experience that you had that led you down that path to wanting to help others who've experienced a lot of pain and trauma in their life?
Absolutely. I grew up where there was mental illness in my family. My mom was functional, very functional. She worked. My parents were divorced. And since I was 4 years old, so my mom was a single mom of 2 children. She worked. She put a roof over her head, put food on the table. But she struggled with mental illness. Yeah. And so seeing that and being keenly aware of how different she was from other moms, other people, I think that is where just my interest and my passion came into being. And also not knowing really who could help, nor whether she would accept help.
I'll get personal. My mom too, has mental health issues and she doesn't see it.
Right.
And so that can be very tough.
Right. It's I think the most difficult aspect, I think, of working in this field is wanting to help someone that doesn't see the problem. And
sometimes their illness doesn't allow them to see the problem.
Right,
when you're dealing with narcissism, right? Getting a narcissist to see their own narcissistic behaviors,
right? It
can be next to impossible at times.
Absolutely. She struggled with paranoia, for example. Well, who is going to convince someone with extreme paranoia, even somewhat delusional, that
what they're seeing and what their perspective is not reality.
It's not reality. And you see this, but you're a child, right? And you're pretty sure that this is not normal. And it does, to an extent, gets validated by people around that will say, oh, that's not normal. But there was also a lot of shame attached to that. Because, who wants to have a mom that, will explode against someone, like tell them off.
In seconds. 0 to 60.
0 to 60.
Walking on eggshells.
Right.
Which mom am I going to see today?
Right.
So that kind of helped gave you, I guess, a lived experience to draw upon that may have been a motivating factor into where you have found your purpose today and what you do today. I think sometimes we put people in classes and the level of care when it comes to healthcare is not equal.
So where they get? No.
It's not equal. And we look at classes of people, whether it be by their economic status, their mental health status. There is so much societal stigma that we limit their access to care and the kind of care that they get. Right. Has that ever been a motivating factor for you?
Access to care definitely has. Access to care has. I think, and I think we still see it today. It's difficult to meet the need for mental health that is out there. And so that drives me in what I do every day. But even before growing up, I also saw it. Well, who would help my mom? Because, when you think about it, well, does she go to work? Yep, she goes to work. Every day? Yep, every day. Does she get there on time? Yep, she gets there on time. And she does her work. And she comes home and we have a house. So it becomes very difficult sometimes to pinpoint. The other thing that makes helping sometimes difficult is the fluctuation, right? So yes, at some points I may need more help than in other points. I will have really stable periods, and she certainly had more stable periods, but then there were periods where it wasn't all that stable.
And, I think, too, families, when they have a child with disabilities or a child who has SMI, sometimes those families, depending on their income level, dictates the level of care that their family member or loved one will receive. And that brings us into Copa Health.
Absolutely.
I adore Copa Health, and I adore the work that you guys do in our communities. And I am so grateful that I have been blessed with the opportunity to be able to work hand in hand with so many of your members every week at Art of Our Soul. Yeah. And when we first, my experience has always been with substance use disorder and addiction. That's my own personal lived story. And I've always felt comfortable being able to help others who look like me, who have experienced the same kind of trauma that I've experienced. When we began our partnership with Copa Health, I was unaware of the depths of the services that you guys provide. And we have worked with folks who have developmental disabilities. And I was nervous the first time because I don't have experience with working with others who have developmental disabilities. And almost imposter syndrome, like, can I really work with this with these folks? And let me tell you, oh God, I can get teary-eyed thinking about it. It brings me so much joy to work with your members who have those. See, I am getting teary-eyed because they have taught me so many life lessons. And one of the most beautiful life lessons that your members at Copa Health have taught me is that, Brandon, don't worry about what's happening later tonight. Don't worry about what is going to happen tomorrow. Live in this moment. And are you experiencing joy in this moment? And are you taking a breath to be in this moment? Because the folks who do happen to have developmental disabilities, they are not worried about what is happening later tonight. They're not worried about what is happening tomorrow. They will tell you straight up how they feel in this very moment, and how beautiful and brutal honesty that is.
Genuineness.
It is authentic.
It is so authentic. If they like you, you see it. If they're happy to see you, when I have gone to some of our residences, they're happy to see you, and you can tell. And they're not thinking, well, what is she going to think if I approach her? Oh, no. They're going to come and say hi. And it's genuine. It's authentic. And that's the best part about working with that population. I agree.
Okay, so for the folks who are watching and listening and may never have heard of Copa Health or the services that you provide, what is Copa Health, and what are some of the services that you guys provide to the public?
Yeah. So we service folks in the SMI, which is seriously mentally ill system, and folks with developmental disabilities. Now we are expanding, and we are going to serve individuals in general mental health and families. Traditionally, we serviced adults, 18 and up, but we are definitely expanding, and there is a need for that.
When you identify as somebody who is experiencing severe mental illness, what does the medical profession mean by SMI? If a family's,
Right.
They're not very educated about, mental health or
Sure.
anything like that. Well, somebody might say, well, what is severe mental illness?
Right. So, to qualify, let's say, as part of the SMI system, you need to have a diagnosis of a mental illness, but it also has to significantly impair your living, your day-to-day life. So whether it is you cannot work because of my mental illness. So I can have two individuals that have a diagnosis with depression, but one of them, the illness really impacts their life, and they're not able to work, and they're not able to function, and their social interactions get, affected. And so we look at, okay, what else beyond a diagnosis is being impacted here? So it's not one diagnosis. There is a list of diagnoses that typically, schizophrenia would be one of them, bipolar disorder, but not everyone
Who's bipolar
will be in the SMI system,
because they can go to work, they can totally function, they can have a career,
Correct.
They can provide food on the
Correct.
table or a roof over their head, where they may not fall under the exact medical category SMI.
Right.
So two people with depression, two people with bipolar, it just goes beyond that. It goes to by how much can you function independently,
Correct.
without assistance
Correct.
from others.
Correct.
That's really fascinating. Even I have wondered, gosh, what differentiates somebody with what I have experienced,
Right.
Which was debilitating at times, but not every day.
Right.
Right. Whether it be depression, suicidal ideation, in which I
Absolutely.
experienced really, truly for the first time in my life once as a child, I remember from the trauma I experienced,
Right.
but suicidal ideation for a period of 2 weeks in January of 2021, where it really was debilitating. But that was a period of time, not
Sure.
every day.
Sure.
And I think sometimes, and as we bring into the developmentally disabled, tell me what that looks and feels like for Copa Health and how you're helping
Yes.
those folks, not only just them, but their families.
Right. So, I like to say that is how COPA started, right? We started in Mesa in the 1950s, back then as Mar Community Resources, servicing families. 7 families got together and said, our children need services. And that's how it started, right? The families coming together and providing, services for their children. And that's how then that system grew. For us now, we provide residential services for folks in the DD system. And we have several that have lived with us for many, many years. Also, individuals with serious mental illness, we do provide residential services as well. We provide day programs because some of the members that we serve don't live necessarily in one of our homes, but they live at home with their families, but they come for a day program. Or they may come for our employment-related services where they get to work and they get to sort of be a part of society and earn a living and do something that they're proud of.
I think there's something that, and correct me if I'm wrong or add on to it, I think one of the beautiful things that Copa Health does by stepping into that space is not only are they providing a program for those who have developmental disabilities to go to and feel like they are part of by creating that connection, creating a space for that connection to be made. The other benefit of that is you're also probably providing quite a bit of relief to the families of those who have developmental disabilities. Because imagine the stresses that are put onto a family when they do have a child with DD and they've raised that child day in and day out. Oftentimes one of the parents has to give up a career to be around the child full time. Sure. But when that child becomes an adult, to be able to give some reprieve
Right.
to a family member so that mom or dad, the caretaker, can also have a life.
Sure. It is very difficult to be a caretaker. Being no one, I mean, it's so hard. And, that's one of the benefits of our day program. So yes, their caretakers can get that respite, very much needed for them, but also our members get to come and interact with others and do art or learn to cook or play a sport. I mean, they have all sorts of activities, and every time I go, I'm blown away and convinced that their artistic skills are way above mine by far.
I have witnessed it. I have witnessed it in real time.
Yes.
And I was like, you just made that. And they look at me and they're like, well, of course I did.
Right.
Well, yes,
Yes,
of course
of
I
course,
did.
yes.
But here's the beautiful thing, and that's why I love telling that story, is because we need to break the stigma about when somebody does get a diagnosis. And I want parents to understand this. When that diagnosis comes that your child or loved one has developmental disabilities, this is not a death sentence. That there is so much life to be lived. And they can be so as far as functioning where they can actually have employment. They can have a job. They can feel fulfilled. They can find purpose. Yeah. This is not something where we have to sit somebody in a room and that's all that their life will be exposed to. That is not living. And I think what the beautiful thing about Copa Health does is they help plant the seed that you can grow and have an extraordinary life.
Absolutely. And they will even go with you to the job site to help train you and give you support. And we have members that have gotten hired by Boeing, for example. They're a huge partner of ours. And that's how they start. They start with having support and learning, and then they go on as their self-efficacy increases. Oh, well, wait, I can do this.
Correct.
I can do this, right? Maybe at the beginning they had help, right? A little extra help, but over time they can do it. And then they go actually through the hiring process, and just like anyone else, and they have gotten hired by Boeing. So talk about impact. Talk about impact.
Kudos to Boeing, by the way. Kudos
Absolutely.
to Boeing. I mean, I love it. I love when when employers take an opportunity to step up to the plate. And realize that there are some tasks and jobs, even at a place like Boeing, that can be done by people who happen to have a developmental disability
or mental illness,
or mental illness.
Yes.
And the thing too, I think that is that just like with anything, confidence plays such a huge role in how we perform.
Right.
And we can't expect somebody to just go out there and be an expert on day one. We wouldn't expect that of ourselves.
Right.
When we're at a new job, we undergo training. So why would that be any different when we judge somebody who has SMI or DD?
Right. It shouldn't be.
Right.
And
because it gives them confidence, and the more confidence they get, maybe they're like, well, maybe I can try something else.
Correct.
Or add on to the responsibility.
Right. But that is human, right? I am like that. You're like that.
I'm like that too.
If I learn something and I get better at it, then I'm more confident and I will keep doing it and take more risks and want to learn more. But if I go somewhere and from the get-go, the message I get is, oh, you're not going to be able to do this. Don't bother. Why even try? That is then what I believe.
Okay.
And so that's the power of the work that we do with the members.
So there are families who are watching and listening and maybe feel a little helpless, with the current situation of a loved one. This is a question I get all the time. I wish we would get one. I don't know if it'll ever happen. It's wishful thinking. But one day, Diane, I hope we get to a place where people don't have to ask me, Brandon, I need help. And my response is, I hate having to ask you, but what kind of insurance do you have?
Yep.
Can we just get to a place in society? where we never have to tell somebody it's going to depend on your type of insurance before I, refer you out. So if there is somebody who's listening and watching and, they're like, wow, these day programs sound perfect. My loved one can still sleep at my house, but hey, it'd be great to get them involved in these other things, or maybe it's the residential aspect. Mm-hmm. When it comes to insurance, like what's their next steps with Copa Health?
I think getting in contact with us would be the first step. And then from there, we can help them figure it out if it would be something we can help with,
Because you are an access provider.
Yes.
And I think that's important.
Yes.
I think that's
Absolutely.
important for people to understand.
Absolutely.
That you guys are an access provider.
Yes. We are. And we also provide, help and services. So when someone qualifies for SMI services, they can actually qualify without necessarily having access. And it allows them to receive some services, but definitely those services that are attached to the mental illness. So psychiatric services, we provide counseling and therapy, which is a lot of what my impact is in that area. But there are some things that can be done. And I agree with you. It's hard. It can be complicated. But yes, we are an access provider. And so if folks have access, they can definitely come to us. We're expanding to service families and expand that age from right now adults and up to the whole family system, right? Because think about it. If I go to the doctor and I know my doctor could see my family, why would I go to one place and take my child another place and my husband to another place?
That's where the integrated health component comes in.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
It's that integrative healthcare, so you can have a primary care doctor,
so
that maybe your whole family can come, so we're not having to go, because your sister has SMI or DD, we have to go to Copa Health, but because you don't, we have to go to a different doctor.
Absolutely. And that is the goal, because some of our members have families.
Yes.
They have families. And so how neat would it be that they come
and all get the same.
They all get whatever, service they need under one roof. And that is the goal. So the goal is expanding to general mental health and also to children and adolescents.
I love that. And, as we begin to close, I'll also tell families this, like, don't ever let yourself eat. There are some families who aren't even registered with access. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, they just freak out. They get to that point where they're just like, I don't know what to do. And then you get frozen and you don't know what to do. And so what I love that, just call Copa, because so many of these behavioral health clinics and hospital systems, they have navigators. So it's just making that call and just saying, listen, I know I probably qualify for access. I'm not registered yet. Many times those clinics have navigators that they will sit there and they will help you get enrolled.
We have a whole engagement
That's
department.
What I mean.
Yes, I know. And that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to help you either not fall off of access, or if you qualify, how can we get you there so that you can receive services?
I love it. Diana Medina, always good to see you. It's always
great to see you as well. It's such an honor to be here.
Yeah, and it's good. Continue to do the good work that you guys are doing over at Copa Health, and I'm so grateful to be a partner of yours. And I know Molina is also very proud to be a partner of yours as well.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you all for watching this episode of Escaping Rock Bottom, inspired by Molina Healthcare.